Hi guys, I'm Pink Lemonade Guy, and today I'll be summarizing all of the survivors, the main 8, the npcs, or others that will help you along the way or that you may see or encounter in the Left 4 Dead games. Spoiler alert, there may be spoilers of how the characters end, or where they go, so get ready for those. Let's get straight to it. William Overbeck, more commonly known as Bill, is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead, and one of the 8 survivors overall. He is a Vietnam veteran who served in the U.S. Army 1st Special Forces Group and is the oldest of the group. He's usually seen wielding the assault rifle, and he often has a lit cigarette in his mouth that only extinguishes when he dies. Bill is killed prior to the events of Left 4 Dead 2's The Passing, during the canonical event of the Sacrifice. According to the Sacrifice comic, Bill was attacked by multiple tanks after he went down to reactivate the stopped lift bridge generator to save his team from an oncoming horde. His age is unknown and his hometown is not known either. But since the story takes place in 2009 and he is a Vietnam veteran, we can safely assume that he is in his upper 60s or lower 70s. It took 2 events tours in Vietnam, a handful of medals, a knee full of shrapnel, and an honorable discharge before the unthinkable happened. Bill ran out of wars, but now an army of infected has declared war on humanity. After decades of aimless drifting and dead-end jobs, Bill's finally gone back to the only thing he's ever wanted, an enemy to fight. Bill served 2 duties during the Vietnam War, during which he suffered a knee injury as a result of shrapnel coming into his knee, causing permanent damage. 2 days after the first infected, Bill was at a veterans hospital waiting for an operation, possibly relating to his knee injury. When a resident staff attempts to make a small talk in regards to Bill's missing family along with his smoking habits, Bill tells him to go practice somewhere else. As he undergoes anesthesia and slowly backs out from the surgery, one of the nurses becomes an infected and kills the operating room staff. Bill somehow stabs off his incoming unconscious through sheer force of will as he simultaneously fights off the infected nurse, disabling her momentarily. Finding a bone saw and a knife to defend himself, Bill fights the sudden rise of infected outside the hospital to make it back home, where he equips his old military clothing, which he had put away for safekeeping. Bill's preferred weapon is the assault rifle, and his sidearm he prefers is the Magnum pistol. Bill's face model is French model Bernard Fouquet, and Bill's voice actor is Jim French. Jim French was an American radio presenter, and he started producing his own radio show, Imagination Theater, in 2003, all the way up to his death in 2017. May his soul rest in peace. Jim also starred in other games such as Gunman Chronicles, Half-Life 2, Payday the Heist, and Dota 2. Zoe is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 1, and one of the 8 main survivors overall. In official media, she is usually seen wielding dual pistols. Zoe, along with Lewis and Francis, return as non-playable characters in Left 4 Dead 2's The Passing campaign. Unlike her perky attitude in the first game, she comes off as somewhat more serious and at times angry. This is possibly due to the events that transpired in the Sacrifice. Her age is unknown and her hometown's unknown, but it says that she is freshly a freshman into college, so we can safely assume that Zoe's age is around 18 to 21 years old. After spending her first semester holed up in a dorm room watching old horror movies, Zoe was given a choice: stop fooling around and get her grades up or drop out. Now that the planet's overrun with murderous zombies and all of her professors are dead, Zoe at least has the cold comfort that she's been studying up on the right subject after all. Zoe was once a student at Aldrich in Philadelphia under a scholarship to become a filmmaker, but instead of attending classes, she spent her time watching horror films and justified this to her upset mother as doing some research. She got her love for this film genre from her father, who introduced her to movies featuring zombies, slasher murderers, and extraterrestrials at a young age. Her father, Wade, wished for her to become a police officer like him, often taking her to shooting ranges to get her into some practice. These actions caused tension between her divorced parents one night and started a heated argument between the two regarding their daughter's future. The argument was short lived, however, when an infected suddenly found their way into their living room and attacked Zoe's mother, Caroline. Or Carolyn? I don't know. Her father was able to kill the infected, but not before it savaged Zoe's mother. Holding Caroline in his arms, Wade commanded Zoe to call for an ambulance. Zoe came back to witness her father being mauled by her mother, who then noticed her daughter's presence and quickly lunged at her. Fortunately, before she could reach Zoe, Wade shot her in the back of the head. His last request was for Zoe to kill him before he became infected. She then reached for her father's gun, and after heartbreaking "I love you, Dad," she pulled the trigger. Weeks later, Zoe was shocked to discover that her father may have been a carrier and the mercy killing was in vain. Zoe's preferred weapon is an assault rifle, and her sidearm that she prefers is a magnum pistol or dual wielding. Zoe's face model is American Egyptian actress Sonia Kinski, who has starred in a bunch of small movies, but her biggest role is most likely in 2015's A Beautiful Now. She has also starred in a couple of television shows called Palm Wonderful, Longmire, and Chance. Zoe's voice actress is Jen Taylor, who is most famous for the role of Cortana, the virtual assistant, and in the Halo game series. Jen Taylor has also voiced Princess Peach, Toad, Toadette, and Salem in the web series called Ruby. Francis is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 1 and one of the 8 main survivors. He is a tough biker with tattoos covering his arms and neck. His tattoos identify him as a member of Hell's Legion, a name possibly inspired by the real-world Hell's Angels motorcycle club. In official media, he can usually be seen wielding either the pump shotgun or the auto shotgun. Francis, along with Zoe and Lewis, appears in Left 4 Dead 2 in the Passing campaign as they meet with the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors. He and Nick bicker with each other and a lot due to their brash natures, although Rochelle finds herself strangely attracted to him. His age is unknown and his hometown is unknown. He is cocky, loud, and pretty sure he's indestructible. Francis acts like the zombie apocalypse is the world's biggest bar fight. When the virus hit, everybody else stockpiled food and looked for a place to hide. Francis found a gun and had some fun. No cops, no laws, no order. If it wasn't for all the zombies, he could almost get used to life like that. At one point, Francis was employed by the shipping company Hirsch, but was presumably fired after assaulting a man. Francis attempts to steal a flat-screen television 2 days after the first infection. When he is caught, he claims that he is a cop gathering evidence for a crime that is not taken seriously. He is next shown in a bar boasting to his friends about why he is going to jail. When one of his friends reveals to him that Pennsylvania jails do not allow conjugal visits, Francis' presumed girlfriend Sandra then says, "Better not waste any more time," and grabs Francis's arm and pulls him into the bar's back room. Francis and Sandra begin kissing in the back room when she gets sick on his vest. He almost leaves, but she convinces him to stay and then promptly bites him. She's able to attack him when Francis' paranoid friend, Duke, shoots her. Realizing that this is no ordinary flu, and that most people cannot be considered human anymore, Francis realizes the possibilities of lawlessness the outbreak has brought, and Duke and Danny lug a jukebox to the room when he grabs a shotgun to begin picking off infected one by one with Duke and Danny, and a few other barmaids. It is unknown what happened to his friends, but the most probable is that he either left them, where they weren't immune or carriers, and succumbed to the green flu at one point of time before Francis had joined the main group. In the sacrifice, Francis admits to Zoe that he finds his old friends more fun to be with during the apocalypse, but would not have lasted 2 weeks if he hadn't met the group. Francis' preferred main weapon are the hunting rifle and sniping rifle, or scope rifles, I guess, and his sidearms he prefers is dual wielding pistols. Francis's face model is American professional surfer Taylor Knox. This is Taylor's only acting credit. He was inducted into the Surfers Hall of Fame at Huntington Beach in 2011. And Francis's voice actor is Vince Valenzuela, who has also starred in a movie called Judas Kiss and TV shows called Grimm and Leverage. And other games he has starred in is Kotuko Chojin Back Alley Brutal, I think that's how you pronounce it. Lewis is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 1, and one of the 8 main survivors overall. His original concept was an assistant manager at a local retail electronics chain, but in the game he is a junior systems analyst at Franklin Brothers in the IT department located in Philadelphia. Lewis, along with Zoe and Francis, appear in Left 4 Dead 2 in the campaign The Passing. In the Sacrifice comic, Lewis damaged his left leg after a witch attempted to drag him into a yacht full of other witches, prior to Francis's dream in the Sacrifice comic, and thus is unable to stand on his own. Due to this, he mans a heavy machine gun during the campaign's finale. In the Sacrifice comic, Lewis was bitten by an infected individual on the arm, hard enough to draw blood prior to meeting the other survivors. However, he remains uninfected, and although the virus may be spread by saliva, exhalation droplets, or bodily fluids, Lewis was either immune or a carrier. Subsequently, it is revealed in the Sacrifice comic that Lewis is indeed a carrier who is capable of infecting people who did not possess a natural resistance to the infection. His age is unknown and his hometown is unknown. Lewis has been working up the courage to quit his job as a junior systems analyst at his company's IT department when a virus showed up and downsized the world. Now Lewis and his new set of goals live long enough to succeed, and a new set of tools, guns, and sharp objects to help make him achieve it. With any luck, he'll figure out how the new management operates before they get a chance to murder him. Before the infection, Lewis was working as the junior systems analyst at Franklin Brothers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. During his lunch breaks, he would often visit the shooting range, which his coworkers would mock him for doing so. It can also be assumed that he also played video games, as he has a figurine of the Heavy from Team Fortress 2 on his desk, and mentions Counter-Strike when picking up a gun, and makes various references to Half-Life, as well as grieving over the lack of an Xbox on the islands on the Keys. 2 days after the infection began, he encountered his first infected in the men's restroom after trying to convince a coworker that the press was overreacting and everything was still safe. After killing the infected, he exited the restroom only to find his office in shambles, his coworkers all dead, and the outside world falling into pieces. Lewis is the most well-educated of all the survivors, holding at least 1 undergraduate degree and an MBA at some point, learning Japanese during an internship in Tokyo, Japan. In the game, Lewis prefers to get auto shotguns as his main weapon and to dual-wield pistols as his sidearm. Lewis's face model is a guy named Sean Bennett. I've tried to find information about him, but he's really obscure, and his website is also for sale, the domain of it, so I'm pretty sure he just dropped from the public eye. I assume it might have been for fitness or modeling, though. I don't know. And Lewis's voice actor is Earl Alexander, who has also starred in the Saw video games, where he played Detective David Tapp, and The Suffering Ties That Bind with additional voices. He also starred in a short film called Courage Doesn't Ask. Coach is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 2, and one of the 8 main survivors. He was a high school health teacher and coordinator for the freshman football team before the infection hit his hometown of Savannah. He is the oldest of the group and takes it upon himself to motivate his fellow survivors. He is 44 years old and his hometown is Savannah, Georgia. Coach has a big heart and a healthy appetite and a wicked swing with the chainsaw. After a knee injury ended his careers as a defensive lineman in college, Coach salvaged his physical education degree barely and landed a job teaching health at the local high school in his hometown of Savannah. Working as a defensive coordinator for the freshman tour team might not have been the best path to a pro coaching career, but it's come in pretty handy in guiding a group of survivors to safety. Coach has watched his beloved hometown get ravaged by infection, and now it's time to deliver his own brand of Southern hospitality. Coach is the eldest, voice of reason and authority of the Left 4 Dead 2 team, playing a similar role to Bill in Left 4 Dead 1. He comes across as a warm-hearted father figure with an optimistic attitude that is hard to disagree with. Despite his friendly demeanor, his experience as an actual coach makes him demand things of the other survivors in a positive way, such as loudly encouraging them to get back on their feet when they are severely hurt, and encouraging them to continue rather than give up. Coach can be seen as a father figure, if not the official leader of the group. He appears to be a fairly pious man, at times leading prayers and reciting scriptures to encourage the group. Coach also respects both his fellow survivors and, to a lesser extent, infected. This is shown if he is on critically low health, as he may say they beat my ass fair and square. Like all the other survivors, he dislikes Sita because of their inability to deal with the infected. This is shown several times throughout the storyline, as during the swamp he thinks Sita is not doing their job correctly if they have been forced to get help from swamp people, and during the park, when looking at the sign, "Where is Sita?" he may say, "Good question, where the hell is Sita? Because I'd like to shoot some of their asses." Coach also has an unhealthy obsession with food. Coach also seems to be the brains of the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors, as during the Dark Carnival, he convinces the team that if they use the pyrotechnics from the Midnight Riders concert finale, it would get the helicopter's pilot's attention. During hard rain, due to the survivors accidentally leaving the gun bag and flares behind with Virgil on the boat, he suggests using the burger tank sign to get his attention. Coach's preferred weapons are the auto shotgun, and his sidearm he prefers his dual-wielding pistols. Coach's face model is a man named Darnell Rice. He seems to keep his, he doesn't really seem to be that famous, and he mostly keeps a private life, but there are a couple videos of him online sharing moments with fans, and he enjoys it when people recognize him as the real Coach. And Coach's voice actor is American actor Chad L. Coleman. He is known for playing Dennis Cuttywise on The Wire, Tyrese on The Walking Dead, Mingo on Roots, Z on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Fred Johnson on The Expanse, Clyden on The Orville, and Bruno Mannheim in Superman and Lois. Coach's real name has never been revealed. I've gotten mixed findings and reports on what it might be. Someone online said that it might be Frank, but there's no evidence to support that. And then Coach's voice actor said that he thought it was Wendell, but Valve has neither confirmed nor denied that. And then in the passing campaign, on rare occasions, in the Under the River tour part, Rochelle will call Coach Carl. So I think it's safe to assume that Carl might actually be Coach's real name.
Okay, Carl, this is more interesting than phase 1.
Ellis, also called Elle, is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 2 and one of the 8 main survivors overall. He is the youngest of the group. A junior mechanic by trade in the city of Savannah, he presents himself as a goofy, beer-loving country guy with an unsophisticated and sometimes naive worldview. According to chat from Valve, he is extremely excited about everything, like managing to visit a concert and being able to kill a lot of zombies, occasionally doing both at the same time, like in the Dark Carnival finale. Personality-wise, Ellis is open, friendly, inclusive, and extremely optimistic, similar to Lewis from Left 4 Dead 1. In common with most young men, he is a risk-taker and believes himself to be invincible. He is also easily distracted, often breaking into rants about things that have nothing to do with the current situation, far-fetched stories about his friend Keith, and indulging in a flight of fantasy about marrying Zoe and taking her off on a cross-country road trip, all at the most inconvenient of times. He is 23 years old, and his hometown is Savannah, Georgia. Ellis is a mechanic with a love of life, a firm belief in his own immortality, and the ability to treat any setback as a fun dare to impress his friends. Born and raised in Savannah, Ellis divides up his time working at a local garage, hanging out with his buddies, and dropping by for Sunday dinners with Mom. Why'd anybody want to live anywhere else? Then the zombies had to go and spoil it. Now, Ellis is looking for new things to occupy his time, and finding plenty. It turns out the zombie apocalypse is one big dare, and there's no shortage of crazy stuff he can try to impress his new buddies with. Ellis has also mentioned that he used to be in a garage band with his friends and that he played the bass. Ellis's preferred weapon of choice are scope rifles, such as a hunting and sniper rifle, and his preferred sidearm are dual-wielding pistols. Ellis's face model is actor Jesse McKinney, who is also known for One of the Good Ones, Le Secret de l'Amour, The Wednesday Letters, and Force of Nature. Ellis's voice actor is American actor Eric Layden. His most famous roles are William Halstaff on Mad Men and A Generation Kill as he has also appeared in films such as Toolbox Murders, Cursed, and Left in the Darkness. Nicholas, usually just called Nick, is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 2 and one of the 8 main survivors overall. He is a gambler with a shady, even violent and criminal past. He seems reluctant to be a part of the group at all and takes the role of the complainer, finding fault in other people's plans, the increasingly sorry state of his once fine suit, and his teammates' characters' flaws as he judges them. This makes him difficult for the others to get along with at first, but that changes as the time goes by, as he learns to trust them and prove himself a valuable part of the team. Nick wears a white suit and blue shirt that he claims is worth $3,000. He has multiple rings on his fingers, one of which bears a symbol belonging to a gang that Francis possibly was a part of. And also, Francis has the same tattoo, so it might be possible that Nick and Francis were part of the same gang. It can be gathered from his appearance that he is a ladies' man, as he has a lipstick smudge on his collar, as well as a love bite or hickey on his neck. It is mentioned on multiple occasions that he was previously married. If Nick hears a witch, he may say, "I think I hear my ex-wife," and in Hard Rain he may say, "The last time I saw this many crying women was at my wedding." He appears to have some trouble with the laws during the Dead Center campaign. Upon finding a Tier 2 gun, Nick may say that he is not legally allowed to own a gun. Given that Nick appears to be an American citizen and thus covered by the Second Amendment, this likely means that he is a convicted felon who are not legally allowed to own or carry guns. He is 35 years old and his hometown is unknown. A lifetime of drifting from the city to city, finding back alley, card games, and trying to stay out of jail has taught Nick 2 valuable lessons. Don't trust anyone, and look out for number 1. He'd come down to Savannah looking for some gullible fish on the riverboat gambling cruise circuit. Instead, he found a city about to be engulfed by infection. Now he finds himself forced together with 3 complete strangers in a fragile alliance that goes against every instinct he lives by. But he's going to have to learn to trust them if he wants to survive. Nick's sarcasm, pessimism, and self-centered cynicism arguably makes him the most antagonistic character in the series. Almost everyone he meets quickly picks up these attributes and takes away or actively dislike to him. Nick's autonomous personality makes him reluctant to integrate fully with the group. In Dead Center, he either tells the others not to bother remembering his name, as he does not intend to stay with them, or forgoes mentioning his name when asked. Nick is also quite abrasive when talking and is not hesitant to insult others, especially if they cause misdemeanor on him. This is most likely a result from his past as a con artist. Strong hints of a violent criminal past surface when, for example, he says it's illegal for him to have a firearm, is an expert with first aid kits, And when badly hurt, he blurts out, Man, it's been a long time since I've felt this bad." Nick also possesses a body of gruesome knowledge that he hints at from time to time, including the relative ease and difficulty of getting brains out of suits and blood out of wedding dresses, both of which he suffixes with the line, "Don't ask me how I know that." Nevertheless, as the game progresses and Nick comes to experience his teammates' abilities and to share their common dangers in dire circumstances, his stance towards them seems to thaw. Although he never quite loses his self-contained and me-first attitude, there are clues that he is not as callous as he appears on first impression. Nick appears to be a very high maintenance when it comes to his appearance, wearing a suit that he claims is $3,000. He often complains about his suit getting ruined and balks about having to travel through dirty, unsanitary places. Nick believes that the green flu outbreak could have been prevented if the world used some more hand sanitizer, and gripes about going through the Rayford Historic Underground Tour or the sewers in the parish. Something when Coach and even Rochelle teases him about. When the survivors go through the sewers beyond the tour, Nick may complain about the unsanitary conditions of the sewer and will offer the others survivors $1,000 to piggyback him ride over the sewer water, making the other survivors mock him. Nick's preferred main gun are assault rifles, and his preferred sidearm is the Magnum pistol. Nick's face model is American actor Taimur Ghazi, who is most known for Criminal Minds as Joe Bachner, NCIS New Orleans as Vice Detective Roger Aubrey, NCIS Los Angeles as James Wallace, and The Forgotten as Jimmy, strip club manager. Nick's voice actor is Hugh Dillon, a Canadian singer and actor who has led the vocalist of a rock band named Headstones, who have released 11 studio albums. Hugh Dillon was also played Ed Lane in Flashpoint, Sheriff Donnie Haskell in Yellowstone, and Mike Sweeney in Durham County. Rochelle, also called Ro, is one of the 4 playable survivors that was introduced in Left 4 Dead 2 and one of the 8 main survivors overall. She was employed as an associate producer on a television news station, in which role she was set on assignment to Savannah to cover the infection's breaking story. Her pink t-shirt features an image of the British electronic band Depeche Mode. She is 29 years old and her hometown is Cleveland, Ohio. As a low-level associate to produce for a big-name news station, Rochelle's job mostly consisted of lugging cables and fetching coffee. But when the outbreak hit and staff started calling in sick, Rochelle got her break, producing a segment from Savannah about the evacuation center located there. She was still setting up the cameras when her big story became a war zone. But that doesn't mean she's letting go of her dream job yet. Surviving a zombie apocalypse is just something else she can use her wits and drive to produce the hell out of. Rochelle's preferred weapon are assault rifles, and her sidearm she prefers is a Magnum pistol. Rochelle's face model is American actress Shanola Hampton, who is best known for her role as Veronica Fisher on the Showtime dramedy series Shameless. Rochelle's voice actress is Rochelle Aites, who has starred in TLC's autobiography Crazy Sexy Cool, the TLC story, short-lived series Drive and The Forgotten, as well as Criminal Minds and Work It. In movies, she has starred in White Chicks, Medea's Family Reunion, Medea's Trick or Treat, and was also a reoccurring role as Agent Greer, an ex-CIA officer on the CBS television series Hawaii Five-0. Alright, and now that we're done with the 8 main survivors, it's time to move on to the NPCs, or non-playable character survivors. The church guy is a mentally unstable man who is never actually seen until he turns infected, who is encountered in Chapter 3 of the Death Toll campaign, The Church, in Left 4 Dead 1. He is afraid of the infection, locking himself in the safe room that the survivors must reach. It is later revealed that he was bitten by a survivor who claimed to be immune yet became infected. As a result, he suffers from extreme paranoia of survivors, coupled with the growing insanity caused by the infection. After waiting for an hour, he assumes that he is immune. Ultimately, it turns out the church guy isn't immune after all. He will change into either a hunter, smoker, or boomer. He repeatedly says better safe than sorry and causes a crescendo event where he rings a church bell to attract the horde to kill the survivors, apparently viewing this as a way for them to prove their immunity/humanity. After the event, the safe room door can be opened and a special infected will emerge, providing a conclusion to his change. The infected he will change into can be foretold by listening to the church guy starting to growl, cough, or gurgle. Before the door is opened, after opening the door and ascending to the second floor of the safe room, the survivors can see that the church guy has written his motto all over the wall over 180 times. The church guy is voiced by Nathan Vetterleen, who also voiced the scout in Team Fortress 2. Whitaker is a 60-year-old survivor who owns a gun store located near the Liberty Mall in the Dead Center campaign of Left 4 Dead 2. By the time the survivors arrive at his gun store, he has already barricaded himself on the roof with large amounts of ammunition and provisions. When the survivors enter his store, he is contacted over an intercom and offers to clear a roadblock that is preventing the survivors from reaching the mall, on the condition that they go to the nearby Save for Less supermarket and fetch him a 6-pack of cola. A crescendo event is triggered when the survivors enter the supermarket and set off the burglar alarm. Once the cola has been deposited in the delivery tray in his safe room door, Whitaker launches a missile at a flammable truck near the roadblock, destroying it and allowing the survivors to continue to the mall. Whitaker's final fate is unknown, though due to his large arsenal and due to being fortified, he probably survived until at least his supplies ran out. Whitaker is voiced by Dayton Cali. Now these are vehicle NPCs. Crashing plane. At the beginning of the runway finale, a civilian plane will try to land on the airport and crash, apparently leaving no survivors. Judging by the amateurish way the plane is turning before crashing, one can assume that it wasn't a genuine work of an experienced pilot. It is likely that a zombie killed the pilots and crashed the plane. This plane is different from the others during Dead Air and the Swamp. It is blue with white stripes, while every single other plane is white and orange. It suggests that this plane belongs to another airline. It is worth to note that during the level, the sound of the plane crashing does not draw the infected, but the sound of a fuel pump starting up will. This plot's inconsistency never was addressed by Valve or the developers. However, this might just be for balancing reasons, since if such a large plane blew up, a horde that's as large as it would be attracted. Another theory is a horde was indeed summoned by the loud noises, but took some time to reach the area. While waiting for the plane to fuel up, the infected finally caught up to the survivors. Leaving choppers. At the beginning of the hotel in Left 4 Dead 2, a CH-53 Sea Stallion, the same type of chopper used by Papa Gator, can be seen leaving the Vanna Hotel. It's unconfirmed if Papa Gator and or Rescue 7 themselves participated in this evacuation. The introduction of the game and the official TV spot show, actually, there were other helicopters on nearby buildings leaving as well, suggesting more evacuations going on in the town. It should be noted that the TV spot version of the scene is slightly different from the introduction, showing only 2 CH-53s, while the introduction shows 4. Unknown bus driver. During the underground, the tour bus of the Midnight Riders can be briefly seen driving around on an unreachable street. Judging by the graffiti throughout Dark Carnival, it is possible that this bus was transporting evacuated survivors to Whispering Oaks rather than the Midnight Riders themselves. More likely, it was taken by the Midnight Riders to Whispering Oaks when they were evacuated by the helicopter. The bus presumably making it there before the car pileup caused by the infection. There is no way for the survivors to draw the attention of the bus. It's unknown whether the occupants either don't notice them or refuse to stop the bus and help. If any infected comes across the bus, it will simply run over them. When the survivors spot the bus, they comment on that they may be seeing things as if it's disbelieved. Leftovers in the game files are unused voice lines that reveal a Midnight Riders tour bus was once planned to be the escape vehicle in an earlier version of the Dark Carnival campaign. The tour bus and the passing likely reused assets from the early ending, though this is unconfirmed. Military jets. Numerous times during the Parish campaign, two F/A-18C Hornets military jets can be seen bombing buildings and streets of New Orleans, apparently trying to slow down the spreading of the infection and or kill the greatest number of infection as possible. Some dialogue of Rescue 7 also imply that they were looking for surviving carriers as well to order rescue, and that they are piloted by Rescue 7 members. The first time they are seen is at the very beginning of the waterfront, which the survivors will note and assure as a good sign that the military is still there. Their last known action is blowing up the Veterans Memorial Bridge. On the E3 2009 teaser, a third jet can briefly be seen, but only two will appear simultaneously during the game. Fighter jets are used presumably to leave as much potential survivors alive as possible, with precise strikes, as carpet bombing with a bomber or using WMDs would put the military under great criticism even in a non-functional society. It would stand to reason that these were precision strikes on concentrations of infected to hold out the bridge for any last evacuees before blowing it up and determining what can be salvaged, and if the city needs to be razed by bombers to stop the infection from spreading. Now, this next part is evacuation personnel. These are survivor NPCs that you will see at the end of the finales of the levels. News Chopper 5 Pilot. The Chopper Pilot is seen in the intro video for The Left 4 Dead, and in the start of No Mercy. He tells anyone who can hear him to proceed to Mercy Hospital, where they can contact him with a radio, and he will pick them up and bring them to an unknown location. During the rescue at the top of Mercy Hospital, he will engage in communication with the survivors, where he will reveal he had an incident, implying he attempted to another rescue earlier but was attacked by the infected. Unfortunately for the survivors who are rescued and taken to apparent safety, the pilot is infected, turns mid-flight, and is shot by Zoe, forcing a crash landing. The survivors, being carriers of the infection, may be the reason the News Chopper 5 pilot became infected, as stated in the Sacrifice comic, or he may have been infected during his street pickup, as he stated in the rooftop finale. Although his cap appears to have associations with the United States Marine Corps, possibly showing a military background, his civilian clothing may also indicate he is currently not affiliated with them. The headphones he wears are Aero X Orbital 2000s. The pilot is voiced by Dennis Bateman, who also voiced the Spy and Pyro in Team Fortress 2, as well as the Civil Protection in Half-Life 2 Beta. John and Amanda Slater are a couple with a troubled marriage, who managed to survive by staying with supplies on their boat, named St. Lydia II. They are stationed near Riverside Park, with John intending to rescue some survivors with firearms, while Amanda urges him to abandon the idea and think of only of themselves. It seems that their marriage was troubled even before the apocalypse, as they have arguments often. John mentions that Amanda was against buying the boat too, when said boat became crucial to their survival later. The survivors contact John Slater by radio at the end of the Death Toll campaign in Left 4 Dead 1. He and his wife pick up the survivors in their boat and get them away from Riverside. John Slater's motives are evidently those of self-interest and survival, because he makes it clear that he's expressly interested in hearing from anyone out there with firearms. This point is reinforced when, according to the comics, specifically when Francis said it, the survivors were later thrown off the boat and left for dead. Judging by his dialogue, however, it seems that he was genuinely intending to keep the survivors and have them as security guards for the boat, even though it is unnecessary, as the infected cannot swim. Another possibility is that Amanda insisted to kick them off, as John mentioned, and their options are in conflict. It's ambiguous if John and or Amanda managed to survive after the events. 2 copies of their boat, the St. Lydia II, can be found in the Sacrifice campaign. One is partially sunk and the other is floating safe and sound next to its sunken sister ship. However, this is likely a reuse of the assets by the developers. Also, during the Sacrifice campaign, Bill constantly explains his desire to escape in a sailboat by arguing that he doesn't want to stop every 15 minutes to refuel a motorized boat. This could be a generalized assumption or an allusion to the survivors being forced to search for fuel by the Slaters during their time together. The latter theory is not as likely, since Virgil, whose ship is around the same size, did not frequently demand fuel from the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors. John Slater makes a return during the Last Stand finale as the rescue. His boat can be heard in the distance during the campaign as the survivors turn on the old lighthouse in order to draw his attention. John Slater is voiced by John Patrick Lowry, who also voiced the male citizens and resistance rebels from Half-Life 2, and the sniper from Team Fortress 2. Amanda was never given any voice lines. The C-130 cargo plane pilot is a plane pilot that evacuates the survivors out of Newburgh in the Dead Air campaign. According to his dialogue, he rather cowardly fears leaving his aircraft to fuel it himself after his co-pilot named Terry in cut dialogue was killed trying to do so. He also mentions his ex-wife, but only in a joke about her appearance, making it unclear as to whether she actually exists. In the comic, Francis mentions the plane later crashed, but it's unknown why this happened or what became of the pilot. There is a chance that because the survivors have been identified as carriers, they could have unintentionally infected him without realizing it. Another possibility is that the crash was purely accidental and he died in it. Even if he survived, it is possible that he was not immune to the green flu and became infected. Since he also mentioned a fear of being shot down, thinking the survivors may have destroyed the previous plane. It is likely that he was risking both himself and the plane, and it might have crashed after being attacked by anti-air weapons. In beta versions of the game, there was a constant tension between Francis and the pilot. Numerous times during the finale, Francis would insult the pilot for not helping fend off the infected, to which the pilot would answer. Also, at the beginning of Blood Harvest, one of Francis's introduction lines was him summarizing his hatred for the pilot, stating that he couldn't even fly the plane, implying the plane crashed and the pilot died. The pilot would have had a larger role in the cut campaign Damn It, as the campaign starts and his wrecked plane, but no additional information is available. The pilot is voiced by Gary Schwartz, who also voiced Heavy and the Demo Man in Team Fortress 2. Rescue 9 is not just one person, but a platoon of soldiers who respond to the survivors when they communicate via radio. Rescue 9 sends out armored personnel carrier to pick up the survivors at the end of the Blood Harvest campaign. The Sacrifice comic reveals Rescue 9 brought the survivors to Millhaven instead of the Echo Safe Zone to find a cure for the infection. In addition, the comic reveals one of the soldiers in the APC was Lieutenant Mora, who went with the vehicle so he could witness the infected for himself. The soldier on the radio is voiced by David Scully. Chopper pilot at Whispering Oaks. During their passage through Whispering Oaks, the survivors will come across a chopper pilot flying over the park, presumably looking for survivors. It's unknown if the pilot is a CETA operative, a US soldier, or just an ordinary civilian trying to help. The survivors then manage to turn on the pyrotechnics show at the Midnight Riders concert in order to draw his attention. He was affected and turned mid-flight. Nick kills him, evidently by the argument between him and Ellis, causing it to crash. Contrary to the other NPCs, his background and the way he was infected are completely unknown. He has just a few lines of dialogue, calling the survivors to the chopper when he arrives. The fact that he was piloting a UH-1 Huey further suggests that he is a civilian, maybe even the same pilot who took the Midnight Riders off the park. In the beta versions of the campaign, during the finale, the chopper pilot was going to approach the survivors during the second tank battle and command them to kill the tank so he could land. These lines were restored with the Last Stand update, but are used out of their original context. Virgil. Virgil is a character appearing in Left 4 Dead 2. He has a Cajun accent and is first heard in Swamp Fever. He left a radio behind at the plantation to see if there would be any more passing survivors. After hearing voices on the radio, proceeds to pick them up. After the survivors fend off a large infected attack, he blows up the gate with a rocket-propelled grenade, similar to how Whitaker did with the truck, and gets the survivors to safety. Later on, in hard rain, he drops the survivors off at Ducatl to search for fuel. And after they get some, he finally drops them off at a dock during the parish. He leaves in search for other survivors. It's possible that he's immune to the green flu and is aware of his immunity to it, as he is confirmed to have remained alive for a long time after having contact with the main characters, who are likely to be carriers, due to the extremely high infectivity, and the fact that he was never turned. He is also likely a carrier. Furthermore, he comments that he is now a widower after his wife was killed by an infected bite, which may mean that he had direct contact with the infected as well. His fate after the events of the game is unknown, but it is likely that he survived due to his apparent immunity, and the fact that infected cannot swim, meaning that his boat is completely safe from them. His boat is named the Lagniappe, a reference to the Louisiana custom of the same name, meaning a small gift given to a customer by a merchant at the time of purchase. There is a running joke that Virgil is actually a talking boat. This theory is substantiated by Chet Falisek, who stated that Virgil is not a man, when someone asked why Virgil existed during the Last Man on Earth mutations. A technical explanation would be the dialogue not being removed when the mutation were loaded. Virgil is voiced by Randall Newsom. At the start of the bridge in the parish, two military soldiers can be heard speaking over the radio. They are known by their code names Papa Gator and Rescue 7. After the survivors grab the radio from the dead soldier to get their attention, they realize the survivors could be potential carriers, but take them in regardless, with Rescue 7 stating that the military is properly equipped for potential carriers. Based on their dialogue, Papa Gator was the last rescue leaving New Orleans and was just waiting some minutes before leaving. It's presumable that Rescue 7 is an entire team of soldiers, just like Rescue 9, and that they sent Papa Gator, an operative, specifically to rescue carriers. The Rescue 7 officer will clearly warn Papa Gator to not attack targets that may be carriers mistaken with the infected. This further demonstrates that the military is concerned about rescuing as many carriers as possible in order to study their immunity instead of killing them like depicted in the Sacrifice comic. It's likely that Rescue 7 and Papa Gator are going to the facility or vessel properly equipped to handle carriers, while Rescue 9 was isolated and thought they may have had to kill the carriers. The soldiers are voiced by Randall Newsom. Now these are NPCs from the Coldstream and the Last Stand campaigns, which Valve has explicitly stated are non-canon, so these are unofficial survivors. The military bombing from Coldstream near the end of the Memorial Bridge chapter is a military plane that will bomb the titular bridge. The bombing sets off a car alarm, starting an unavoidable crescendo event. Despite its hindrance, the sighting of the plane gives the survivors hope, as it implies that the military are still in the area. The chopper pilot from Coldstream, on the final level of it, in Cutthroat Creek, the survivors find themselves in a fenced woodland area with a storage building. Inside the storage, there is a radio that they use to call a nearby chopper. The pilot then heads to a forestry technical service depot that was taken over by CETA as a processing facility when they are successfully rescued. Since Coldstream is not part of the Left 4 Dead canon and never was officially continued, it's unknown what happens with the pilot and the survivors after their pickup. In early versions of Coldstream, the character was part of the US military, and there was a cutscene of his helicopter crashing. The survivors were rescued by another military helicopter found near the crash site. The plane that crashed during the last stand. At the beginning of the junkyard, the survivors will see a single-engine plane on fire. Later, in the same chapter, they will find out the plane crashed and started a forest fire. A dead body, presumably from the pilot, is found beside the burning wreckage. The plane is an original prop from the Sacrifice DLC. An identical plane can be found crashed near the beginning of the Sacrifice campaign. John Doe. At the beginning of the Lighthouse finale, in the top of a watchtower near the safe room, there is an apparently non-interactive radio inside of a bedroom. However, if the Pladio does try to use a radio, a man named John Doe will answer, but is immediately cut by the static, and the radio device stops working. He is coughing, indicating that he may be infected. John Doe is voiced by Salad, one of the members of the Last Stand update team. Keith is a supposed friend of Ellis. He is often mentioned in stories Ellis tells while in a safe room. If Ellis's stories are to be believed, Keith has suffered from third-degree burns over a majority percentage of his body twice, 95% by fireworks and 90% by deep frying a turkey, lost 2 fingers and a thumb to frostbite, broke both of his legs after driving his car off a cliff, been stabbed by a guy dressed up like a ghost, was tear-gassed by the police, the effects of which lasted for a year, snuck a paintball gun on a roller coaster, got attacked by an alligator, bombed by the military. Among the bombs Ellis claims were nerve gas and cluster bombs, nearly drowned in the Tunnel of Love, has done time in prison, got cut up by his own bumper car lawnmower, leaving him with wounds over 90% of his body, got cement paved over him in a sewer after falling down an open manhole, lived in a graveyard for a year after getting kicked out of his house, invented several types of soft drinks, hung spit on the overhang in the Tunnel of Love, fell off a roller coaster onto the tracks while the ride was still going, got a tattoo on his forehead saying "I'm a moron" for a dare, winning $200, ate 3 pounds of raw chicken. In the game entitled says catfish. He no longer recognizes his brother Paul, lost sensation in his right foot because of the 3 pounds of chicken, attempted to build a house out of mud, was attacked by owls, turned a recreation of colonial times into a raccoon fight in his backyard, pretended to be homeless, had a water balloon fight with balloons full of urine, drove across a river without using the bridge, married a couple, and would have even gone married himself had he not run away from his wedding. Oh shit, Keith looks like he had a hard life. But it is likely that Valve simply added Keith in as a comedic relief in the seriousness of the game. At one point during Hard Rain, Ellis even confuses the survivors fighting their way through the burning hotel in Dead Center for something that happened to Keith. It's unknown if Keith is still alive and or infected, or if he's even real. If Keith is real, and is indeed alive, it's very possible that he is fighting the Horde, seeing as so many incidents fail to kill him. However, in certain cut lines, Ellis states that Keith was evacuated, claiming he was the first on a helicopter. There are 2 pieces of graffiti that may mention of a Keith, but don't specifically specify if this is the same man that Ellis is friends with. One piece of graffiti in the lighthouse reads, "My name is Keith Marshall, and I'm going to die here," which, if this is Keith that Ellis is friends with, could mean that Keith has made it to the lighthouse, but he has given up hope. Seeing as the lighthouse is in Left 4 Dead, and seeing as Left 4 Dead 2, in which Ellis talks about Keith, takes place a week after the start of Left 4 Dead, he could have already died. There is also graffiti written that reads, "Keith, waited 3 days at the meeting spot after we got separated. I can't wait anymore. Meet at Mercy Hospital." Written by someone named Krista. After contacting Gabe Newell asking if Keith is actually real, he answered saying Keith isn't imaginary, except, well, it's a video game, so it's all imaginary. Ellis sometimes mistakes the fallen survivor for Keith, but then notices he is not.
I ever tell you about the time my buddy Keith made sushi? Yeah, his mom took him to a sushi place for his birthday, and he didn't want to go, but he turned out he loved it, man. But it's like $10 a sushi at one of them places. So Keith figures, hey, how hard could it be to roll up some raw food and seaweed, right? As it turns out, it's hard. Now, they say experience is the best teacher, and experience taught Keith that if you ever eat 3 pounds of raw chicken, it kills you. Now, luckily, Keith's brain went into self-defense mode and started shutting organs down to head the chicken off of the pass, and the doctors were able to get him out before his heart stopped. But to this day, Keith has no sensation in his right foot and doesn't recognize his brother Paul no more.
Sometimes when Rochelle is in low health, she briefly mentions a man by the name of Jacob, saying to herself, "Girl, you should have stayed with Jacob." Jacob might be a close friend to Rochelle, a boyfriend, a family member, or an acquaintance from her old place of work. The line implies that she was with him at the time of the infection before meeting the others, got separated from him, voluntarily or otherwise, and doesn't know what happened to him. It should be noted, Rochelle rarely says her only line citing him in comparison to her other lines for low health. This may hint that Rochelle doesn't like to remember about Jacob for some reason, but even so, believes he may have made it to safety without her.
Girl, you should have stayed with Jacob.
Chicago Ted is an unseen character, most likely originating from or connected to the city of Chicago, who claims that no zombie is safe from Chicago Ted. This is either a lie on Chicago Ted's part, or he is actually proficient at killing the infected. It is possible that Chicago Ted wrote this graffiti himself, or a fellow survivor wrote it out of respect or awe. Whether Chicago Ted is still alive is not known. His name may be a reference to Ted Phillips, the president and CEO of the Chicago Bears in 1999. The Angels of Death are a group of survivors who appear to be rather successful and very proud of their accomplishments. They appeared through graffiti twice in the Left 4 Dead series, once in Crash Course and once in The Sacrifice, each time drawing a collection of customized skulls labeled with the members' names. Originally, there were 7 members: Brenda, Jerry, Chris, Phil, Sean, Brock, and Jason. But during the course of the next week, they collected an 8th member, Jaime, making them the largest known group of survivors in the games. Like the original survivors, they probably started out in the greater Philadelphia area, as their first set of graffiti can be found in Whitney County, and over the course of the infection, they have traveled at least far south as Rayford, Georgia. In Whitney County, they marked 600 tally marks, presumably representing the infected they killed while held up at the point. In Rayford, they make the claim that they are clearing the way for other survivors, killing every infected they come across, though this does not explain why there are still numerously infected in both campaigns other survivors cross. Their cockiness does not seem to be taken well by other survivors. In Whitney County, their graffiti is commented on by others, writing "sick bastards" and "world coming to an end" as they are drawing pictures. There was supposedly a 9th member, I think. As it's shown in the graffiti, there was a broken heart or torn heart, and above the heart it says Teresa, so either she was a part of the group or not, and the torn heart might signal that she left the group or was kicked out, or maybe she died. There's actually technically a Left 4 Dead 3, albeit new characters that replace the survivors of Left 4 Dead 2. It's called Left 4 Dead Survivors, and also called Left 4 Dead Arcade. It is a Japanese version of Left 4 Dead 2 redesigned for Japanese arcades, featuring an entirely new cast of survivors. They include Yosuke Kudo, a Japanese college student who was visiting America during a long-sought trip when the outbreak began. He is voiced by Ryuichi Kijima. Haruka Hirose, a Japanese high school student in Japan who was also visiting America. She is voiced by Ayane Sakura. Sarah Kirishima, a Japanese-American tour guide. Her father is Japanese and her mother is American. The outbreak occurred during a Japanese high school field trip under her supervision. She is voiced by Miyuki Sawashiro. And Blake Jordan, a bartender who worked in the hotel lounge when the outbreak began, and used to be a member of the army. He always tries to be positive, but he can't help but worry about the dog he left back home. He is voiced by Hidenori Takahashi. Okay, and that's going to be the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And share this video with your friends. I think only like 2% of the people that watch my videos are subscribed, so please subscribe. It'll really make me happy. Anyways, I am Pink Lemonade Guy, and I will see you guys in the next video with me explaining the weapons and other items that the survivors can use. Bye for now.